Well, it's a good Sunday for Arsenal fans. They are champions of the 2023-24 Community Shield after beating Manchester City. And certainly, it's a huge statement of intent for the Gunners who missed out on the Premier League trophy last season. Here on Scoreline, we'll delve into that game and also look at some Ghanaian players are on the move. Mohamed Salisu has left the Premier League club Southampton for Monaco in the French Ligue 1. And also, there's a huge one involving Ajax midfielder Mohamed Kudus. Reports indicate that an agreement has been agreed in principle between Brighton and the Dutch club for the Ghanaian attacking midfielder. We'll get into that as well. And then we have the latest from the Women's World Cup. Well, for the Banyana of South Africa, they are fortunate the run has come to an end after they've met enough firepower in the World Cup. We'll get into all the highlights of what has happened so far at the World Cup ongoing in New Zealand and Australia. This is Scorecard here on Citi TV with me, Evans Man. So many thanks for your time with us. Let's go for a quick break. When we come back, the guys are here and we'll get into the analysis. All right, so this is Scorecard on Citi TV. We'll get into the weekend's big sports stories for you here. And we are ready. The guys have already joined me in studio. There's Edwin Kwakofi and also Yao J. Minta. Guys, hope you're having a good evening.
Yeah,
yes,
very good evening.
I like
yes,
it.
We are excited because we are one step closer to the return of the Premier League.
Exactly. Football is back and back for good. Tell me, how did you miss this, the off-season?
Oh, I missed it extremely because watching other matches, international matches, it's fun, but there's not that excitement, especially when you are listening to the commentary on Citi FM. It just brings up the excitement.
Yeah.
You are just eating or doing other things, but you can always listen to it, hear the players, hear the commentary. It's fun.
Well, football is almost back, and very soon, by next week, we have the Premier League starting. Man City up against Burnley in the first game. A huge one, though, for Pep Guardiola and his former player, Vincent Kompany, who is now the Burnley manager. But let's start a conversation today from Ghanaian players on the move, quite a huge one. And we're talking about the Nima boy. Yeah, many in that town love him so much. Mohamed Kudus. We understand that Brighton and Hove Albion have agreed a deal in principle with Ajax's club side. It's an estimated 40 million euros deal for the attacking midfielder. And we know previously he had been linked to the English Premier League. The clubs like Everton, Arsenal at a point in time, Chelsea, and now from David Ornstein of the Athletic, we understand it could be Brighton and Hove Albion. And for Kudus, it means that he gets to work with Roberto De Zerbi, a manager many believe will help his career as well. Let me start with Yao on this one. Yeah. And let's look at this move from Mohamed Kudus. I remember your article on citisportsonline.com some weeks ago, right?
I don't go with him to Manchester City.
Exactly. You wanted
yeah, people insulted me. I know. A lot of people insulted me because I said at Chelsea, he will be good at Chelsea, but it wouldn't be a perfect fit at Chelsea, and it would rather be a perfect fit at Manchester City. And it showed earlier today in the Community Shield when the substitutions were made. Yeah. It was Cole Palmer who was brought in, a left-footed midfielder who can play as a winger and can play as a centre forward, same as Mohamed Kudus. And it all falls in line with why I said, okay, he will be a better fit at Manchester City than at Chelsea. But at the end of the day, he's virtually on the verge of moving to Brighton and Hove Albion. And I think it's a fine destination for him to go to because one, as you mentioned, the coach is a fantastic coach, and number two, I see him just walking straight into the starting lineup because you look at Brighton and Hove Albion, they play with a 4-2-3-1 formation, and virtually two positions are virtually locked in that three-man unit behind the striker. This time around, it could be either Danny Welbeck or Joao Pedro. But look at the three-man unit behind the striker. On the left side is Mitoma. He has it locked. Then behind the striker, in the central area, it's Enciso. Then it's on the right side where it's up for grabs virtually because sometimes it's Pascal Gross who plays there. Another time it's Buonanotte who plays there. Adingra, Simon Adingra, he's Ivorian. He played at Right to Dream Academy right here in Ghana. he's also at Brighton and Hove Albion. He can also play in that position. But I look at Adingra, for instance. He's more like a backup to Mitoma because he favors coming off that left side of the wing because he's right-footed. He cuts into the field onto his favorite foot. And so the only potential stumbling block to Mohamed Kudus walking into the starting lineup is Buonanotte. And he's 19 years old. As talented as he is no Mohamed Kudus. No disrespect to Buonanotte.
You think Kudus is ahead of Buonanotte and all
Kudus is ahead of Buonanotte. And that's why I see him making a move into the starting.
So clearly you are Donkoming this move.
Yes, I am Donkoming this move to Brighton and Hove Albion. It's a very good move.
Yahweh Jemint are clearly Donkoming that move from Kudus, from Ajax to Brighton. That's a good one for him. Now let's talk about Mohamed Salisu also. He had 3 years already at Southampton. They were relegated. And so now there's a lifeline for him in France with Monaco. They finished 6th last season in the French league, meaning that there's no European football for the Monaco team. But for Salisu, it's a 5-year deal. We understand 15 million euros. That's how much Southampton received from that deal. Yes, last season, his season was, I don't know, affected by injuries and all that. But here is now a lifeline to revive his career. Edwin, your thoughts on this move from the Premier League to the French league?
Look, on the face of it, it's a pretty good move for Mohamed Salisu. He gets to leave the championship. He doesn't play in the championship. He stays in one of the top 5 leagues in Europe. He goes into a team where he almost immediately steps into the starting lineup. With Disasi going to Chelsea, there's space in that starting lineup for him to step into. And one more thing, he goes to a league with a lower profile than the Premier League, which means there's not that much attention to him, to his mistakes, to his errors, to him as a person, which often distracts a lot of other Premier League players. So on the face of it, it's a good move for him. However, I feel it's a downgrade as well. From the Premier League, moving to the Premier League to the French Ligue, I feel it's a downgrade. There were a lot of other clubs in top leagues who might have been searching for a player of Salisu's caliber, his quality and his attributes. The fact that he's a left-footed centre back is one thing they are a dime a dozen in the world right now. They are very, very rare, especially quality ones. And Salisu is one of the really quality ones. So there were a number of clubs who are in the market for such a player, such a profile. And I feel that him moving to Monaco, perhaps a little too early in the transfer window, might have kept him from the eye of a lot of other clubs. You look at Brighton, for instance, they were clearly in the market for a left-footed centre-back with Levi Colwill. And Colwill himself has moved to Chelsea, back to Chelsea after being on loan at Brighton. Once they've lost Colwill, he is definitely a profile that Salisu, I mean, is definitely a profile that they could have aimed for. Yeah. So I feel that there were a lot of opportunities for him. Even Liverpool could have looked his way once other priorities were dealt with. So, but I feel it's still a good move. He will get his chance to play, maybe rebuild his image, keep his fitness. It's a league that I'm sure he can boss without being overly physical, which the Premier League required. You needed to be physical, you needed to be fast, you needed to use a lot of your physique, your running. You needed to run a lot, make a lot of movements, which took a toll on him physically. So being in a league like the Ligue 1, where he doesn't have to do all that running, he can stay comfortable, make his passes, make his tackles, even step out of defense and go into attack as he loves to do. I think it's a good chance for him to rebuild himself, get himself into the eye line of a number of top clubs across Europe, and come back into the big leagues and make a bigger impact.
So you don't commit the move as well? Do you don't commit?
It's not my preferred move, but I'm happy for him.
You're happy for him, okay. So Edwin Kwakovi says he's happy for Mohamed Salisu, although he wished he stayed in the English Premier League. Good time now to talk about the World Cup also. It's happening in New Zealand and Australia. And we're starting with the African interest for South Africa. They had quite a good run in the group stage level. They qualified, they made it to the last 16, but they faced too much firepower and they were eliminated in the last 16. Let's enjoy the highlights of how South Africa were booted from the World Cup. All right, so that's how the Banyana of South Africa's World Cup dream ended, losing by 2-0 to the Dutch team. It's quite a very good game for them, but As to how South Africa did not score, quite shocking though. Edwin, I thought they created enough chances to at least get a goal.
They did, and I'm pretty surprised that they couldn't find a goal in this game. And it's been a feature of their tournament. They play really good football, yet the goals evade them. And for the African teams, we need to look at our goalkeeper, because that second goal was embarrassing. How do you let that ball slip through your hands? And we saw that with Zambia as well. Their goalkeeper had some issues, Musonda. South Africa here. But I feel the Bayana will go out of this tournament and be happy with the way they played, not just the other games in this tournament, but this game as well, to take on the team that finished as runners-up in the previous tournament and just go toe-to-toe with them and basically dominate them for certain periods. I think they'll be happy with how they played. They just need to look at their attacking and defensive goalkeeping and rejig them for the next tournament, because this is clearly a team, as we've seen so far in this tournament, that can go far if certain things are made right. Because they had a lot of chances, as we saw there. Finishing, once they get the finishing right, once they deal with their goalkeeping problems and their mentality when it comes to these games, they will sort everything out. But we need to talk about the Netherlands. Anytime they go into games, one thing I've noticed about them is they score really early. They attack you really quickly, score really early, and then get themselves settled. That way they can play their own game in terms of defense. I think 6 of their goals so far in the tournament have come in the first 20 minutes of games. That is how they kill teams. Score early and then play their own way. So I feel they are favourites definitely to at least reach the final of the tournament, as long as they keep this run going.
Certainly a good one for the Netherlands, who have progressed to the next stage of the Women's World Cup. But it wasn't to be for the USA. They are the Women's World Cup champions, and they've been crushed out of the tournament already. We'll get into that discussions in a bit here on Scorecard, but let's go for a pause. When we return, there's more discussion on the Women's World Cup for you here. Welcome back. This is Scorecard on Citi TV. As we get into the weekend's big sports stories, later we'll talk about the Shield, where Arsenal are champions after beating Manchester City. But now, we discuss the Women's World Cup, where the big one is that the USA have been knocked out by Sweden. Let's enjoy the highlights of that game. All right, so the USA out of the Women's World Cup after that penalty shootout, 5-4 defeat at the hands of Sweden. But the USA, the whole tournament, they were very, very underwhelming. Yao, from the group stage where they fell behind the Netherlands, here they are. It's been quite a very poor showing for them. And this is their worst ever World Cup performance. Your thoughts on how the USA...
And ironically enough, this was their best performance in the tournament, and unfortunately ended up with they exiting the competition. I honestly believe it's the end of an era, because you look at players like Alex Morgan, you look at Megan Rapinoe, you look at players like Lindsay Horan. I think it's the end of an era. Julie Ertz, the same thing. They need to give more minutes and push the focus onto young players like Trinity Rodman. Those are the players that they need to look out for moving forward. But it just didn't work out for them. Their coach made some tweaks. He played a double pivot in this game, and they created more chances than they had ever created in the tournament. And unfortunately, it just didn't work. This was their best performance, but once they couldn't breach the Swedish defense, and the game had to travel to a penalty shootout, it was always up in the air. And it was the Swedes that managed to get lucky and get the win and move on to the next stage. And for me, I picked Sweden as my dark horse candidate to win the title. But unfortunately, they are going to meet Japan, another strong country. Honestly, if they are able to surpass or overcome the Japanese challenge, I'm very convinced that they will end up in the final. But at the end of the day, it was another efficient performance from the Swedes. It's just unfortunate that the United States of America played their best game in this particular matchup, but it just wasn't enough. And it just goes to buttress the performance of the US in this tournament. They just didn't click. It just didn't work, especially in the group stages. They exited the competition scoring just 4 goals in 4 games. And,
that's very, very bad.
And for the US, that's very, very, very poor. And this is a team, or this is a nation that averaged 17 goals in all of their 8 previous World Cup appearances. And so for them to score 4 goals in 4 games and exit the competition at the round of 16, yeah, it just highlighted the kind of performance that they put up in this tournament.
So the US is struggling to find the goals. Well, for Spain, interestingly, before this game in the last 16, they had lost to Japan, and it was quite a very huge statement for them. But they came back stronger, and they hammered Switzerland by 5-1. Jennifer Hermosa, Aitana Bonatti, and her teammate Alexia Putellas were all in the take-off event for the Spanish national team La Roja to progress to the quarterfinals. Let's enjoy how Spain hammered the Swiss. All right, so that's how the Spaniards defeated Switzerland by 5-1 to progress to the quarterfinals of the Women's World Cup. Guys, after that blip against Japan, here they are, high-flying once more. I think before the Japan game, people considered the Spanish as favourites. Yeah. And then they were torn apart whether are they really favourites. Here they are again, another statement. Have they made a huge statement that they are once again the favourites to win the World Cup? Edwin?
Well, Spain are a strange case because they came into the competition on the back of some tension between the head coach and some of the senior players. Usually it doesn't end up well, but they breezed through those first two games. It was against Japan in their final game when they had already qualified, we must say, that they were torn apart 4-0. And the coach was so upset that in this game, she made 5 changes to the team. And you could see the effects. The players seemed to play a little freer than they did in the Japan game. They seemed to understand each other a little better. They actually had 70% of possession, which is the highest in the knockout stages of a Women's World Cup game. And it showed here. But, of course, they are facing a Switzerland team that is it's very weak. That was lucky to make it to this round. In fact, they scored 2 goals of their own in the group stages. Only 2 goals in the entire group stages to get to this stage. And I'm sure that they saw this Spain team as one that was perhaps too strong for them. This Spain team has a lot of quality players. We saw Bonmati, who is a fantastic player, Alessia Putellas, who was who's been Ballon d'Or winner, and I think this Spain team definitely has a lot of quality. The only thing that will keep them or hold them back is the unity in the team, the cohesion. If this tension between the players and the coach continues, you might find them losing their form a little bit. Another thing that might help them is the side of the draw they are on. Yeah. As Yao said, Japan are meeting Sweden, two of the strongest sides in the competition, which means one of them is definitely leaving the competition, creating more chance for Spain, who are on a relatively favorable side of the draw, to reach further in the competition. So they have it all to play for. They were my favorite team after the first group game to reach the final and even win it. The Japan game seemed to alter my decision a little bit, but I think they've returned to the kind of football that made me love them. And if they go on like this, they definitely will go far.
Well, at the Women's World Cup, tell me a better team than Japan, and I'll keep waiting. Well, Norway had an ambition of making it to the quarterfinal until they met Japan, who said, no way. Let's enjoy the highlights. Scoring her 5th goal of the World Cup to help the team make it to the quarterfinal of the tournament as well. It's a huge statement there from the Japanese. So far, huge favorites. I think they are huge favorites. Guys, Yao, have they finally convinced you? I know previously you had your, I don't know, you were quite unsure whether they are there for you as your favorites or not. Have the Japanese now convinced you that yes, they are favorites now? I
honestly believe that whichever nation wins that Sweden-Japan game will go to the final. I honestly believe so, because these are 2 very, very good teams that will be facing off in the quarterfinals, and it's unfortunate that one has to exit the tournament at this stage, because both teams deserve to be in the latter stages of the tournament. But I look at Japan, their eye for a through pass, it has been consistent throughout their run in this tournament, and the fact that they don't just work the winged areas, they're able to play and carve teams of central areas too, and that's all because of their ability to run willingly, consistently, and it puts a lot of pressure on any back line. And the fact that they are very efficient with that through ball. It's very incisive passing, and their movement is so fluid, very efficient, and that's what I love about this team. The organization is on point, and honestly, I strongly believe that whichever team wins that Japan-Sweden game will definitely make it to the final. And looking at how things panned out, looking at the fact that they have incredible stamina, incredible physical attributes to their game, and I like to the fact that Sweden had to play a very athletic USA team. They went to extra time, and that mental grind of going through the penalty shootout, I think it might just end up being their weakness in that quarterfinal matchup, and it might just give the Japanese that little bit of advantage for them to be able to get past them into the semi-finals.
We still have the show to talk about. Arsenal's triumph today over Manchester City. But let me get into some of your messages that you sent to us on Scorecard here on Citi TV. Now, Andrew Quist says, good evening, Citi Sports. Watching the show live from Tema Community 2. And then Kobe from Tishin says, the South African goalkeeper is good. These mistakes do happen. The Americans are even gone. South Africa have done well. Spain will beat Sweden. Sweden is not playing any good football, and it will show when they meet Spain. So clearly, he disagrees with our session.
Sweden
about,
will play against Japan.
Yes, so so we'll make that correction. So Sweden is playing
against Japan.
Yeah.
In the quarterfinal.
Exactly. But for the South African goalkeeper, the point is that
I honestly believe she was one of their top performers in the tournament, but it was just one of those costly mistakes that happens once in a while.
Exactly. Now let's talk about Manchester United. They finished their pre-season, getting ready now for the start of the English Premier League. Eric Ten Hag, his boys are ready. It was a 1-1 draw against Atletico Bilbao. Facundo Pellistri scored a late goal for the Red Devils to salvage that draw. Let's enjoy the highlights of the final preseason game for Manchester United. All right, so that's goal from Facundo Pellistri salvaging that draw for Manchester United against Atletico Bilbao. And it seems Harry Maguire just cannot stop himself from committing mistakes. And here he is again, committing that mistake that led to the Man United goal they conceded. Let's start with that goal United conceded. Harry Maguire and his issues.
He is who he is. He's not comfortable with the ball at his feet. That passing game is not
playing Maguire.
That tag is a sarcastic tag. It's not like he's good playing out from the back. It's just a sarcastic tag, honestly. He is who he is. He's 29, almost 30 years. He is who he is. You're not going to change Harry Maguire into a ball-playing centre-back at this stage of his career. And you look at the mistakes that have led to goals, and some don't lead to goals that he commits. 80% of the time is connected to passing. And so that is not a strong part of his game. So when I see these things happening, I'm not surprised. But the more concerning thing is the broad back line.
Okay.
Man United in this preseason consistently have conceded goals from individual mistakes, trying to pass out from the back. And if you've played, 4 friendly games, and in the 4th game you are still having these kind of issues, that's a little bit of worry for me.
Does Eric Ten Hag need to change the system then, if the players are still struggling to get it?
No, he's an idealist, and he knows that he has the materials to be able to play out from the back. It's just one of those things where in preseason mistakes do happen. I expected them to be far fewer at this point in time than it is at the moment. But at the end of the day, if it's Maguire who is committing it, I'm not surprised. At the end of the day, it's preseason. Let's not make it a big deal, too much of a big deal. But that's the only bit of 10% of concern I have, that Man United conceding goals are of self-inflicted bad passes.
All right, so that's your Jamie Test thought on United's wrap to the preseason. I think they had some good results, but overall, it wasn't the best of preseasons for the team. Edwin, your thought on how United's preseason has panned out?
Well, I think...
And this 1-1 draw against Bilbao, they had to wait for Facundo to get the goal.
Look, I agree with Yao. You don't expect too much from preseason. A lot of the players just want to build their fitness. The manager wants to test out a lot of system. And in particular with this game for United, I don't think United fans should be worried. I think Ten Hag will actually be pleased with what he saw in this game, because none of the players who will start for United in their first game in the Premier League were on the pitch. He basically changed the whole squad, gave the second squad a chance to face a top side in the La Liga, and they ended up not losing. They actually played really well. They were dominant, except for the mistake which caused them the goal. So I don't think they'll be pretty pleased. If you go through the squad, none of them. You didn't have Rashford. There was no Mason Mount, no Onana, no Lisandro Martinez or Varane, Casemiro. All of the starters.
Are you surprised Ten Hag is using the preseason more on his youth players and young players rather than the experienced lads?
No, well, a week before the season starts, you don't want any of your main players getting any injuries. They've already had a few games in preseason to test out a few things. He's sorted on his first team. Right now, it's just about seeing which players are ready to step in when needed. And it was a chance for the other players to show what they have and make a case to be the ones who are called upon in case Ten Hag needs an impact substitution. And Pelestri clearly showed that he is one who is ready to step up throughout the game, and not just because of the goal. He looked a real threat, just feeding in players, beating players on the move. It's unfortunate that a few of his chances that fell to Sancho were not taken. Yeah. Other players also failed to take their chances. But I feel United have a solid squad depth that they can call upon in case they need it. For Maguire, I watched a lot of the game, and I feel that, yes, he is very bad with his feet. But there were a lot of instances where, in other situations which weren't related to his feet, he was very shaky. I know he's come up for a lot of criticism because of how he's played, the mistakes he's made, but I feel it's all getting to his head. Right now, it's more of a psychological thing than an actual football thing. Because I still feel he's a quality player when he's given the support.
He's low on confidence at the moment.
Yeah,
he's
very low on confidence.
If there was a point below bottom, that would be Maguire right now, because his manager clearly doesn't trust him. He's put him on the bench taking his captaincy away from him. His teammates don't trust him. We saw that video from Onana recently.
Yeah, it's even sad that a new goalkeeper comes and wants to shout on him.
Absolutely. And we've seen that the fans absolutely do not trust him. They want him out of the club. So right now he is bottom. I feel that he needs a move to a different club right now.
And confidence is key, because you remember Diego Forlan at Man United. He didn't live up to expectation, and one reason he gave up was that Sir Alex Ferguson didn't believe in him. He didn't have the confidence in him. He went to Atletico Madrid, went to Villarreal. Those coaches believed in him. They had the confidence in him, and look how he turned out.
Well, it's a good time to be an Arsenal fan. Champions of the Community Shield. Let's go for a break. When we return, we shall enjoy highlights of how Arsenal beat Manchester City. This is Scorecard on Citi TV. Well, you're still watching Scorecard here on Citi TV. We are into the final lap of the show, talking about the Community Shield for the 2023-2024 season. That's the season opener. Arsenal enjoyed a good party. Rice was served and the shield in the bag. Let's enjoy how the Gunners gunned down Man City. So that's a sweet penalty from Fabio Vieira, inflicting a third consecutive Community Shield defeat on Manchester City. I don't know, Man City, anytime they get to Wembley for the Shield, they just fumble and they struggle a lot. But they get to win this Premier League season though. Guys, we've seen how Arsenal finally get one over Manchester City, and I'm sure Mikel Arteta will be happy and relieved to finally get this one over his boss. How was this game won? Tell me, Edwin, how was this game won?
His former boss.
His former boss. Okay, sure. So, once it's your boss, it's always your boss. But clearly, his former boss. I agree with you on that one. But let's talk about how Arsenal won this one. I think at the, 91st minute, Arsenal fans were losing faith. When it got to 11 minutes of the added time, they thought that was it for them. And then they found a way through that deflection from the shot from Leandro Trossard. And then there was a lifeline for them to win on penalties. But your overall thought on how Arsenal won this one?
Well, I think one thing that played a part was fatigue.
Okay.
Yes, you saw that Pep made just 3 substitutions in the game. Arteta made 5. You have an opportunity to make at least 5 or 6.
Yeah, 5.
Yeah, 5 in the Community Shield. Pep didn't take advantage of that. And once his players went really at their best in the game, eventually they started dropping back. Arsenal had a lot of the ball. After City had scored, they started passing around. And when you keep chasing the game like that, your players tire. They get tired running after the ball, trying to get it back, trying to create something. And eventually at 90 plus 11 minutes, they were exhausted. And Arsenal got lucky there with that shot from Trossard, ricocheting off Akanji and going in. But I think overall, Arteta will be really happy with how his side play. We talked a little about whether he would start the game with only Rice or only Partey in midfield. But he started with both of them, which we all suggested because City's midfield is possibly the strongest part of their team at the moment. So if you go in there weak in terms of numbers, you will struggle. And fortunately for Arteta, he had the numbers in there. They packed the midfield. They had their chances up front. Kai Havertz unlucky on a couple of occasions. They had other opportunities to score, but they never gave up. And that is one thing we saw from them last season when they faced Man City. They sometimes gave up and lost their way when they conceded. This time they didn't. They kept going at Pep Guardiola's team and eventually got the win. And it's a really big confidence booster heading into the season to pick up the first trophy of the season and also to stop Pep from completing the set. And I think morale-wise, confidence-wise, it's a huge boost to the players system.
And clearly you could see how disappointed Pep Guardiola was.
Yeah, he was.
He wanted to win this trophy.
Yes, he loves winning. He loves winning, and this is a trophy that's eluded him for now 3 years, as you said. He wouldn't be happy with that. He wants to win every single trophy. And this is another trophy, another chance to complete the sets like he did at Barcelona. Unfortunately, it didn't happen for him.
Yeah, I want to pick your thoughts on the Shield. Arsenal fans are enjoying, but how did they get this one done?
I think, for starters, unlike the previous or their last game against Manchester City, this time around they were disciplined with their press. You look at in the first 10, 12 minutes, they pressed, they established a mid-block where you had Kai Havertz and Odegaard around the center circle area, and that's where they started their press. Then, as the game went along, they started pushing up a little bit more. So that told me that they were disciplined with their press and knew when to really try to pin Manchester City in their own half. Their last meeting before this one, they tried to pin City very high up the pitch, very early in the game. And because they hadn't gone through that sequence consistently, their press was a little bit in disarray. And that enabled Manchester City to just pass their way through Arsenal and get that goal. They got in the, I think, 5th or 6th minute in the last game. But this time around, they were disciplined. They stayed a little bit behind. They established their mid-block. They didn't fall too deep. And ensure that they had that pressing game going established before they advanced high up the pitch and decided to press very high up the pitch. And that, for me, was a very good move by Arteta. And number two, I think both managers wouldn't be particularly excited about the delivery from their right fullbacks, because you look at Ben White, he had multiple opportunities to put the very good cross into the box for Kai Havertz to attack, for the likes of Kai Havertz and Odegaard to attack. But consistently, his crosses were poor. Just a couple were able to get into the penalty box and create some kind of dangerous situation for Manchester City. Then you look at on the flip side, Manchester City, Kyle Walker's delivery was also a little bit poor, and that for me wouldn't be something that either manager would be pleased with. And honestly, Kieran Tierney, he had one shot and he blew it. Partey had one shot to establish himself as a key component for Arsenal this season, and he took it. He took it brilliantly. But for Kieran Tierney, I think he's missed the opportunity, and he'll be gone, because at this point in time, now you have Jurgen Timber, who can play as an inverted fullback, and you also have Zinchenko ahead of Kieran Tierney, and he had this chance, and unfortunately he didn't do justice, taking up defending Cole Palmer for that goal. So for me, it was a very good win for Arsenal.
So the curtain raise are done and dusted. We have the Premier League starting 11th August. Man City up against Burnley. And then week 1, there's a huge one. Liverpool up against Chelsea. We have all that for you on Citi FM live radio commentary as well. Grateful Yahweh Jeminta and Edwin Kwakufi for your analysis. And to you out there at home.
Pleasure.
Grateful also for tuning in to the Scorecard here on Citi TV. Many thanks for the privilege of your company.